You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers about hikers for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi guys, thanks for coming back to the show. You're listening to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. And usually for me, recording it today has been one crisis after another. As many of you know, I edit the whole show on a Wednesday, which I know is probably not great planning on my part, but I'm not very good at planning anyway. So it was a touch disconcerting when I woke up to an internet outage this morning. This rarely lasts more than 5 minutes, as it's normally after a power cut. Well, we hadn't had a power cut, so I was a bit bemused as to why it was out. So, and I'm sure plenty of you will be nodding your heads in both understanding and empathy, that I then had to spend about 50 minutes with Frontier's customer service bot for it to tell me to unplug the modem and, guess what, plug it back in. When that didn't work, I appeared to have exhausted somewhat moderate resources, so I asked to speak with a person. She gave me a phone number. After 40 minutes holding on, answering surely enough questions to be able to join the CIA, I was connected with somebody else who, guess what, told me, this time in words, to unplug it, then plug it back in. When this complicated diagnostic didn't produce the expected result, this young woman said that she'd have to send out a technician on Friday. So helpful. So without Wi-Fi, I'm fairly limited in my ability to get a show to you. Anyway, not to be deterred, I went to the local library with my laptop to use their Wi-Fi, only to discover that they weren't open until 10 o'clock. So I headed to Starbucks and set about editing my recordings. I know I'm ranting, but to cut a long story short, the laptop drained its battery quickly and I lost all of my editing after about 3 hours. So I headed to AT&T, upgraded my plan and got myself a personal hotspot on my phone to get this done. Redoing the editing, I think I'm going to make it on time. And if you're listening to this, I obviously did. Today, though, we won't be having a reading at the end. Instead, we've got a great guest and updates from our 2 remaining Mighty Blue class of 23. Our main guest is Aron Goss, or OG. Aron was also hiking the AT this year, and frankly, he had just about the most perfect hike I've ever heard of. We have a terrific conversation before handing over to Joanne and Jessica for their latest recaps. So let's get on. Here's Aron Goss, or OG. One of our listeners, Glenn Villanueva, suggested our guest today. This is Aron Goss, or OG. Hey, Aron, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Steve, thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
Now, you completed the AT this year, finishing in July, I think. Actually, before we get to it, tell us about your dates and your finishing number at Baxter State Park, which is pretty darn good. Pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started February 23rd, 2023, and I finished July 23rd, 2023. And when I summited, I was hiker number 123.
Is there something in your characteristics that made you want to do those things? Or I bet you loved getting that number 123, didn't you?
It was really cool. I mean, that was pretty unexpected. Obviously, the starting date was something that I had chosen. Yeah. And really, actually, the summit date was something I had chosen as well. And that just kind of worked out because of the way my family came to meet me.
Yeah.
But, so 23 is actually kind of an important number for our family. Both my sons wore that number when they played soccer. And so.
Oh, really? I didn't know that bit. Oh, my gosh.
Absolutely.
Is that why you went in 2023, by the way?
Well, it was part of the reason. Yeah. I mean, part of the reason was just I knew it would be, kind of a good number that would be easy to remember. Yeah. So when people ask me, years from now when I'm old and feeble, I could say, 223. But yeah, the family significance of the number 23 kind of ran pretty deep as well.
That's pretty cool. By the way, when you get to my age, you are old and feeble already. So it's all good. So you're a 53-year-old guy. In fact, I think you turned 53 on the trail. And that's one of those kind of middling ages to go. How were you able to make it happen at an age when people are normally still working for the man?
Yeah, absolutely. I just kind of made the conscious decision to go for it. I really had intended to, work for a few more years, at least 5 more years, and then, kind of enter the normal retirement, method. But in conversations with my wife, she said, look, you don't know what's going to happen in 5 years. You're in shape now. So if you want to do it, go for it. And so with her support, I took the leap and walked away from my job.
And did she know that you wanted to do this for some time?
She did. It was something that we had talked about. And so then it just kind of, as it got, we both kind of got more interested in it really through watching some hikers on YouTube.
Sure.
And then we really, did some hikes together and really just kind of talked about it. And it, became more apparent that this was something that I was really passionate about.
Yeah, and she likes hiking, I understand, but she wasn't into the feral living. Is that correct?
That's right, absolutely. She loves what I call pretty hiking. So out and back to a waterfall. Maybe a nice weekend overnight that involves like a nice sunset, those types of things. But then, returning to a shower and a good meal.
So when you broached the conversation, it wasn't a surprise, and she was supportive, which, as everybody knows, I think that's one of the critical areas of anybody's hike, is for people to have that support from home. How were you first introduced to the AT? I think your dad had some experience backpacking, didn't he?
Absolutely, yeah. So my dad and his brothers hiked the Long Trail. And so he was originally from Connecticut, and so he and his brothers and his dad hiked the Long Trail back in the olden days, with
Careful,
canvas backpack.
I was born in the old days.
Canvas backpacks, canteen, old military surplus type of gear.
Right.
And so he really instilled that love of the outdoors and hiking and backpacking. And so then after I graduated college, he and I took a few trips together as well. Right. And so, it's always been something that's kind of, been in my blood and something I've enjoyed.
And I hesitate to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Did your dad see you do this?
Unfortunately, he did not. So he's been gone for some time. But
did he know you were going to do it, though? Did he know you were going to do it?
I felt like, I'm going to answer that by saying I felt like he was with me on the trail. There were a number of times when I really felt his presence along with me. And so I'm going to say that he knows.
I bet that was a special, funny enough, and it just occurs to me then when you said that, I bet that was a special moment for you when you're in Vermont, you come to, it's just before the Inn at Long Trail where you hit the Long Trail, don't you? That must have been quite something. I think Dad was here. Did you get that feeling then?
Absolutely, it was so powerful. Really, as soon as I entered into from Massachusetts into Vermont, just this feeling of I'm walking the same ground that he did, and it stayed with me for a while, and really it stayed with me all the way until the time when the Long Trail and the AT kind of diverged. Yeah, and from that point forward in Vermont, I really kind of struggled. And there was a number of factors there. Part of it was just it was wet and rainy, and the sun never penetrates the trees, and there's a lot of puds through that section. But I also felt like kind of diverging from where his footsteps were with me, kind of had a little emotional impact on me as well.
Do you know what? If that works, then that's important, isn't it? I can totally get that as well. Yeah, there are times when I thought my dad actually he never hiked and anything like that. But when you're feeling vulnerable, it's nice to have the anchor of a loving parent, even though they're not necessarily there. So I can totally relate to that. So you were introduced to the idea of hiking. You hiked with your dad after college. What did you see in the experience of being out there that attracted you? Was it the feral nature of life?
Yeah, it's tougher when you just get it in short bits, because you just sort of get a little bit of the beauty, but a little bit of the unpleasantness as well, and you don't really get the full effect of what a longer section hike or a through hike kind of brings you. But I got just enough touch of kind of what it would feel like to really spark that interest, to want to take on a much larger trip.
So what did it feel like, though? Was it something that was it the adventure? Was it the hardships? Was it the exercise? Was it the people? Because it's not for everybody, this. I absolutely know that, because some people go out there thinking they're going to do this forever and ever, and suddenly within 2 or 3 days they're thinking, what on earth have I done? But, it isn't for everybody. So what were you feeling out there that really made this is going to be something I'm going to do one day?
I think a lot of what you mentioned, the hardship, the exercise, the sense of adventure, and then the accomplishment as well. Just knowing, oh, look, I've got to go climb that mountain, and then you get to the top of that mountain, and you if you can look back, if you can see where you came from, like, wow, I did that. And then just the kind of thought of the self-reliance, and everything that I have is on my back. Everything that's important I have with me. And so all of that combined, just that sense of adventure.
After I did my hike, I got a listener very kindly sent me a map of the 80, a beautiful 10-foot by 2-foot map, beautifully coloured. And the guy who actually designed it, he Larry McKnight, he offered to personalise it for me with my photos and so on. And he asked for something, a saying that I said when I was out on the trail. And I can see it now, actually. It says, "There's never been a mountain I couldn't get over." And I felt that when I got to the top of all the mountains, having struggled my way up there, sweating and grunting and moaning all the way up there. When you get up there, that thing of looking back and looking forward, thinking, my gosh, I've been up and over that one. I've been up and over that one. I'm going to go up and over that one as well. That's a very powerful feeling. You use the expression accomplished. That accomplishment, that is something that certainly I got when I completed it at Katahdin, and I'm sure you did too. But you did mention something just now, which I haven't heard mentioned on the show for ages: PUDs. There's no such thing as a PUD. I've heard this pointless ups and downs. They're not pointless ups and downs. It's the trail. It's where you go.
It's the trail. That's right. It's a means to the end. Yeah, very much so. I guess the way I use that phrase is there's certain sections where the ups and downs are less rewarding than others. Certainly like Franconia Ridge, the presidentials. Those are ups and downs, but they're highly rewarding. Oh, yeah,
totally. I thought you were saying they weren't rewarding. Oh my gosh, no, they're epic, absolutely epic. Yeah. So anyway, you wanted to go. It was on the bucket list, but life took over. Was it at the back of your mind you were still going to do it, or was this something? My bucket list was always something I was never going to do, actually. So how did you view your bucket list, especially if this was it?
Yeah. So. It was always kind of back there, but when life is going on, you're taking care of the family, taking care of the kids, you're working, you're commuting, all of that stuff. Sure. It kind of gets pushed to the back. Yeah. And then so when my oldest son graduated college, and my youngest son is senior in college now, so it just sort of more lined up in a way that it made sense to actually kind of go for it. Yeah. But I'll be honest, I was scared. I was scared for a lot of reasons. But one of the biggest ones was I just didn't want to fail. I was stepping away from a pretty good career to take this on. And so, my friends and family threw a going away party for me. I had quit my job.
No pressure then.
The local newspaper did a story on me.
Even worse.
So the community was looking at me, and so I didn't want to come up short.
Did you feel that pressure, especially because there are days out there you think, "What am I doing here?" You must have had that thought.
Well, so I felt that pressure a little bit at the beginning, but I'm going to tell you, it did not take long for me to really get into a routine. It was kind of early on when I realized, you know what, I think. If I don't have any type of injury, I think I can probably do this. Wow. So I was fairly confident pretty early on that I would be able to achieve it.
I never thought that till I saw the brown side at Katahdin. I thought, I'm not going to bloody make it most of the way. Yeah. So the window of opportunity opened up for you. And so how did you actually prepare? Because I know you've done day hikes and longer hikes, I'm sure, as well. But how did you actually prepare with the sort of stuff you needed? Was it the normal YouTube rabbit hole, or were you able to access perhaps better guides, and other people who've done this, access to other people who've done this?
So the YouTube rabbit hole is real. So you can definitely
real and endless.
and endless. And there's so many different opinions out there, and there's so much information. But I actually watched a few YouTubers that had completed it and that I trusted. And so I looked at their gear, and, did my own research, went on Reddit, I got information there. And so, yeah, just kind of spent some time kind of assembling my gear. And really, I had never been on a longer than, a 3-day trip before. Wow. So that was another part of the fear factor is just, can I sustain this? Or will I enjoy it, for that long?
I've got to tell you though, you mentioned earlier on about your local community was watching you. I had similar experience because when people knew I was going to go, I had to get a send away party and all that sort of thing. And since I've done it, I wasn't actually that worried whether I could do it because I didn't think there's any chance I could do it, to be honest with you, when I first started. I mean, it's ridiculous. Sort of walking 2,000 miles up the country over bloody mountains at my age. It was ludicrous. So what you should know is that I did a section on the show some time ago, and it was called Fear and Loathing on the Appalachian Trail. And I think it was about 8 out of 10 people, their biggest fear was not finishing. And yet we all know that the odds are against us when we start, maybe 20, 25% sometimes in a good year finish. So, you aren't alone in that thought. I would imagine, though, having that expectation that you're going to do it must add some pressure. Did you enjoy those early days, or were you still feeling that pressure of keeping going? And in other words, did you know you were enjoying it straight away?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I did. No, I mean, the pressure was real, but it wasn't, it didn't overshadow, I guess, the enjoyment that I was having as well. So, starting in early February, or late February, like I did, the trees were not leafed out.
Yes.
It wasn't super cold when I first started there in Georgia. It was 60 degrees.
Nice.
But then when we got into March, it was absolutely freezing. But I enjoyed the cold. The reviews, and as long as you kept moving, you were fine. And so I was really enjoying it, really from the start.
Yeah.
And so the pressure was there, but it wasn't to the point that it took away from my enjoyment. And
you told me when we spoke before how you prepared physically. Tell us about your wife wanting to buy a Peloton.
Yeah, she did. So she had been on me for some time. She was like, I want a Peloton. I was like, we don't need that. We won't use it. It'll just be a clothes rack. We don't need it. And she kind of kept on and kept on. Finally, I was just like, all right, fine. Just get the Peloton.
That's the normal way, by the way. You know,
right.
You know that already.
Yeah. I needed to be smart and just say, yes, get the Peloton. Yes. So it arrived, and I guess the day that it arrived, I hopped on kind of begrudgingly, and I'm not going to like this thing, and proceeded to ride every day for a year after that. So it was definitely part of my fitness routine. And not just riding the Peloton, but they also offer kind of some fitness instructors that offer, some strength workouts as well. And so there were a few instructors that I kind of followed and helped to try and, build up my cardio and my leg strength.
Sure. As well. I didn't even know they had those extra things as well, which sounds great, by the way. So did you feel that physical conditioning helped you out when you were out there?
It definitely gave me a good base to start from. There's nothing that's going to prepare you for hiking every day other than hiking every day.
Yes, I agree.
And I was working full time. And so that just wasn't really an option. I walked and hiked as much as I could. But I would say overall, get in as good, if you are thinking about taking this adventure on, get in as good a shape as you can. And so that was sort of always my goal. And I think it did absolutely, help prepare me. I think it also helped minimize, injuries as well.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true as well. I famously don't prepare at all, so who knows? who knows what the right way is? And by the way, I meant to ask you this as well. What did your bosses say when you said, "I want to quit my job because I want to walk 2,200 miles"?
Like most people, you're crazy. Why would you possibly want to do
Quite
that?
Right too.
And it is walking away from my job was a little bit unfortunate because it was a job that I actually did enjoy, and it was a nice job. But the timing, I don't regret it one bit. The timing worked out, and it was an adventure of a lifetime. So, yeah.
Of course, yeah. And actually, when we spoke before, I wrote down something you said, which I thought was such a great practical approach. And I believe you and your wife shared it, about being separated for 5 or 6 months. One of you said, I'm not sure who said it, it's just a moment in time. How was that separation for you both? And did that kind of hold you in good stead, that thought that it's only a moment in time?
Well, yeah, and that's really kind of how we approached it. We looked at, okay, this is probably going to take, anywhere from 5 to 7, right? I mean, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, sure.
And we kind of looked back like, okay, what were we doing 5 months ago? And, it really, it wasn't that long ago,
Feels like when you're out there though, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, it does. But it goes so quick, right now it just, it was a moment in time, and so when we would talk or text or chat, we would utilize that phrase and that saying to sort of, make sure that we were staying focused on, this is just where we are right now, but it's not going to last forever.
That's such a great approach, and I've not heard that people say that before. So I think that's an important thing to think of. It is a long time, no question about it. But you're right, in the context of your life, it really isn't. I mean, I went to the UK last year. I remember we were planning a year in advance, and now it's a year and a half and behind. The right. Time has gone incredibly fast. So how did the gear that you chose from YouTube work out? Did you have to make many changes when you were out there?
I actually did not make any changes. I was very
wow.
None.
Good
no,
for you.
yeah, I was very happy with what I brought. My pack. Oh, get this. So here's one more instance. My pack weight when I weighed in at Amicalola Falls was 23.2 ounces.
Wow.
Or 23 pounds, 0.2 ounces. Yeah, but 23 again. So it had to be.
It had to be. Of course it did. Yeah. Mine was 42, by the way, when I went first time.
Wow.
I learned on the job, as it were. I had a lot of on-the-job training. You work that sort of stuff out. So you worked your gear out. And you've mentioned about getting quickly into a routine, and you said that your morning miles were your best miles. I had this approach. I mean, I wished I couldn't do it. It took me 2 hours to get out of camp every morning. It was ridiculous. But I always tried to get between 10 or 11 miles by lunchtime, because then the afternoon was your own. You could kind of add on 6 or 7 or maybe 10, another 10, but you really didn't have to because you put in quite some miles. How did you manage your miles?
Yeah, no, morning miles. I mean, that's like you say, you nailed it. I mean, that's the best. I mean, so my typical routine was, wake up sometime around 5 o'clock or so. And I was actually pretty quick at packing up, but I typically took my time, had my breakfast every morning, my coffee every morning as well.
All right.
And then just, packed everything up, and then, tent was the last thing to go. Into the pack, and I was typically on trail by 6:30.
Impressive.
Maybe 7, somewhere in that time frame. I was not a particularly fast hiker, but I was hiking with youngsters, and they are fast, and so I would typically leave an hour or 2 before them, and typically get into camp, an hour after them. But
that's okay, doesn't it? We've obviously said the last one to Katahdin wins every time, and I know that you weren't part of a set tramley as such, but you talked about hiking with kids and so on. You hike with people sometimes on and off. Tell us about a night in a shelter with a group of youngsters, which really epitomises what it's like to be out there for us older guys.
Absolutely. So I was hiking with, is it okay to name trail names?
Sure, of course.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So let's see. It was Grateful, Big Tuna, Radio, and Coyote.
Big Tuna, great name.
And I actually named Big Tuna as well.
Oh, excellent. It's always great to have somebody you name, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So Big Tuna was 18. He had graduated high school early and was out on the trail, which unimaginable. I could not imagine.
Awesome.
Coyote was 24, turned 25 on the trail. Radio, I think, was 25 or 26, and Grateful was 21. So at one point, Coyote said, "Oh, gee, how does it feel to be hiking with kids that are your kids' age?" And, I just said, "I think it's awesome. I think it's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it. I love it. It's just, I related to them because my kids were their age, and they were fun. They didn't get injured and they hiked fast, which was kind of annoying, but,
They fly past you. They run downhill. What's that all about?
I'd leave camp 2 hours early and then I'd hear behind me, here comes Radio and Coyote running up behind me. "Hey, OG." I just want to trip them.
But I bet that taught you something, didn't it? It certainly did me, because it's such a great equaliser. You're sitting in shelter. You've all done, say, 800 miles together. You know what it's taken for them to get there. And I think it just equalises everybody on the trail, which makes it such an egalitarian place for anybody to go and visit and enjoy it. So why were you OG? Was it the kids who called you that?
So that actually came from my kids. So last name is Goss, and they just always called me Old Goss. And so all their friends called me Old Goss, and then they just kind of got a kick out of OG because I'm so gangster, OG, original gangster. And I'm so far from that. So
well, when you and I talked about it before, I presumed it's because your kids play soccer and OG was own goal, but I was clearly wrong.
No own goal. No.
And I know that the class of 2023 has had some, shall we say, unpredictable weather. In fact, incredibly varied weather, actually. You pointed out something the other day about the relative level of the stream crossings this year. Tell us about what the normal benchmark is, and then share this year's number, because there's quite a remarkable difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just had rain after rain after rain, and so the stream levels were getting so high that a lot of those crossings were quite dangerous. And so they have a benchmark of one of the stream crossings, and they kind of use that to let hikers know, is it safe to cross or not. And so I think the typical benchmark of just a normal ford, just normal conditions is the number 200. I'm not sure what the unit is, whatever, milliliters per
sure.
Whatever the unit is, but 200 is what normal is. 400 is where it becomes dangerous to actually ford. And there were times when I was crossing and the number was actually 1,000.
Good Lord. What does that look like?
It looks scary. Water up past your waist, inching up, above your belly button, headed up, just depending on how tall you are.
That bad.
Yeah.
And so, rushing as well.
Rushing. So, using your trekking poles, and they're just vibrating so hard in those rushing currents. And it's just, you just have this fear in your head. If I slip or take a step, I'm going to get swept down, and I hope I don't hit my head. I hope I don't fall. I hope I don't lose all my gear. Everything's going to get soaked. Just so many fears. But there's not a ton of options. There are some road walks and those types of things, but some of them really, there aren't any options, and you just kind of got to go for it.
Yeah. I was lucky both my years. We didn't have any bad stream crossings at all. There are a few quite kind of sketchy a little bit, but I call sketchy get my feet wet. Not really that sketchy, in fact. And you actually said when we spoke before that you were wet all the way through Maine. That's not the place to get wet all the way through, is it? Did it dampen your spirits at all, or were you just so energized by the fact you were getting near the end?
By Maine, there were a couple days where I was just trudging through shin deep water pretty much all day.
Oh my gosh.
That is really, really tough.
Yeah.
That is really, really tough. That was the couple days leading up to Kennebec, coming up to the pond there. Yeah. And those days were frustrating. Then beyond that, I basically was in water pretty much, like you said, the entire state of Maine.
Wow.
I'd gotten a new pair of shoes at the start of Maine, and they really kind of gave out quicker than any other pair that I had. And just because they were wet every single day.
Dear. That's tough. And you plan to hike Katahdin with your wife and your two children. You even had to slow down to work out the correct date. So how did you start planning ahead? Because they couldn't book their flights obviously until such time as you were actually going to be ready. So how did you work it all out?
Yeah, that was kind of tough to be honest. So I had a tracker that I used, and so I would put in each day my miles and where I started, where I ended up, and kind of notes and that kind of thing. And as part of that tracker, it was on my phone. It would give me a predicted finish date.
Oh, really? What was the app?
And so
what was the app?
I'll have to look that up for you. Here, I'll just pull it up on my phone.
Sure.
So as I was hiking, that finish date kind of got sooner and sooner, lower and lower, right? But then as I got, let's see, it's logbooks, thru-hike.
I thought you were multitasking. Sorry, I can never do.
I am. So logbooks is the app.
Oh, interesting. I should check that out.
I'm not sure where I found it.
Okay.
Online.
Okay.
Anyway,
So you had this tracker,
yeah. So as I'm hiking, my finish date was starting to come down because, my mileage is, we're going up.
Sure.
Then when I got up towards New Hampshire, and obviously the miles just kind of plummeted, and then that finish date started to creep further and further out.
Right.
And so we had to just kind of set a date that we thought that I could be at the end. And it was also kind of dependent on when my older son is employed now, has a job. Thankfully, he's off of my payroll.
Excellent.
And so he had a work commitment as well. And so we kind of set that 23rd as a summit date.
Of course you did.
So,
but you wanted to do anyway, didn't you? So that's perfect.
It had to be.
Yeah, absolutely had to be.
But so in order to kind of make that work, I did have to slow my miles down through the 100-mile wilderness, and I had to take 2 0 days there at Shaw's as well.
That's worth it.
Before going into.
That's nice.
It was nice, and at that point I was tired. My body was really tired, and so it actually made going through the 100-mile wilderness a lot nicer than if I had just been just trying to knock it out and running through.
I agree with you. One of my guests a couple of years ago, very early in the show actually, I think her name was Bethany. She got through the 100-mile wilderness with her hiking partner in 62 hours. I can't, to me, that's ludicrous. I wouldn't want to do that myself. And I didn't go for it. First time I went back and forward to Shaw's for the first 4 nights. But the second time I did it, I went all the way through, and I would say it's one of the finest parts of my hike with Trigger. We just had such a ball, just the two of us together, with obviously people coming by and so on. But to be able to share that time was a very quiet, soulful, thoughtful time that we were able to share together, and I wouldn't have missed that for the world. So talk us through the day with your family, because I know they came to meet you.
Yeah, so the day before, I kind of went from Katahdin Stream Campground, that paid campground there, and then next day I entered into Baxter and hiked over towards the Birches, and so spent the night in Birches, and then the next day was extraction day. So they came and picked me up there on the 22nd, and my wife had rented an Airbnb, and so took me back into Millinocket.
Had a shower.
Yeah, in a shower. Had a great meal or two, and rested up, and we got up super early the next morning, and we're in the car, and we were lined up there outside the gate. The gate's open at 6, and so we were there in line, and we got through fairly quickly. And my wife had gone online to get us a parking pass at Katahdin Stream Campground there, and so we had a parking pass. So we were able to kind of, bypass other folks that were in line, and got into the park. And so we, hopped out of the car, did some stretching. We were actually on the trail by 7 a.m.
Good stuff. Yeah. So how was the climb? Did you have to? I mean, you had 2,200 miles on your legs. They didn't. So how did you manage that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we obviously we're going up the hunt trail, following the white blazes.
Sure.
And so that first mile is it's flat. I mean, it's flat. It's easy, And we got to the sign.
What's the big deal about this? Yeah,
right. Yeah, we got to that sign that said like 4 miles to go. I said, look at that, we knocked out a mile quick, and they were kind of like, yeah. I said, that was flat. Now we're getting ready to climb. But they are. they're all in really good shape. My youngest son plays Division I soccer at UNC Asheville. My older son had played club soccer for NC State, and my wife's a runner. My youngest son's girlfriend was there with us as well, and she had played college volleyball. So these were all athletes that were ready to take this on.
I bet you were still faster than them, though, weren't you?
I mean,
yes,
they did
were.
great.
Yeah,
they did great. I'm just going to say
very
that.
gracious of you to say so. Quite right. Quite right too. So you know what? That must have been so darn special. To have your family around you. They supported you all the way up there, and they came to see you have that moment. I would imagine that's something you're going to look back with such joy in your life, and that's something you've shared as a family at the end. And that used the word accomplished last time. That was the thing that struck me when I touched the sun. I felt accomplished. Did you have all those emotions going on, or was it? Because a lot of people say they feel a bit flat when they touch the sign. How did you feel?
Flat is not what I would use to describe it. No. They were my team. They were my biggest supporters. They supported me throughout. They supported me before the hike, during the hike.
Sure.
We went into this as a family and as a team. And so to have them there at the end really made it extra special.
Sure.
My wife had come out and hiked with me, I think 4 or 5 times. At least 5 times, maybe even 6 there at the beginning, when I was kind of closer to home.
Right.
And it was easier for her to get out and meet up with me. And so she had hiked quite a bit with me there at the beginning, but it had been a while since we had seen each other. She wasn't able to make it up, toward the northern states. And so to have her there at the end was really special. And the boys as well. It just, it really meant so much.
I can tell you, man, you sound like you've had a bloody perfect hike. It couldn't have gone better for you, could it? I know. I'm sure there are times when you were miserable and you were injured and you fell and all that sort of stuff. But yours is about as perfect a hike as I've heard for a long time. You look totally unfazed. You look totally relaxed, and you're hanging out with young kids. It's cool, isn't it? I mean, this is a cool thing to do when you get older. I think it's great. But you've actually done something that I still haven't had the courage to do. What did you get recently as a memento of your hike? In fact, to be fair to the listeners, he showed me. This is not a small attempt at having a memento. Tell us about it.
Well, so before I started, I kind of had this idea in my head. If I'm successful, if I finish this thing, then I'm definitely going to get an AT tattoo
so
to kind of commemorate this. And so, I got some art last Wednesday, actually. So,
it's like the bloody Sistine Chapel on there, from what I saw of it.
it's my forearm, and so I had one of my viewers comment. They said when you go in, you go all in.
You certainly do. Oh dear! I tell you, it is quite a commitment. It's not just a couple of sticks, hiking sticks put together with AT written on it, is it? It's a real tattoo. Are you done now, or is the bucket list still open, or is it got a few more entries?
So during the hike, I hiked, with a number of different people, a lot of good friends, and a couple of guys I hiked with, Gummy Bear and Odin, and we started talking kind of early on. There's a hike out west that's kind of calling our name.
Wow.
So PCT could be down the road. I'm not ruling it out. I'll say that.
Have you mentioned it to the wife? Does she still think it's 5 or 6 months?
I want her to hike it with me.
Oh,
really
that would be cool. That would be cool.
I'm not sure she's up for that. But yeah, that would be amazing if I could.
Well, look, I really appreciate you coming on the show, Aron, and I'm glad that one of our listeners was able to introduce me to you. You have had as good a hike as I think I've heard anybody. And I've done nearly 400 shows of this, so I know what I'm talking about here. So thanks for coming on. Great to meet you, and hopefully we'll run into each other again sometime.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, buddy. Take it easy, okay?
Thank you.
Cheers then. Bye. Well, a terrific guy, eh? And we often talk about separation from home and the importance of support from home. Aron and his wife just looked at it as, it's just a moment in time. Such a simple expression, but it perfectly captures what it was for the two of them. I'm sure it enabled Aron to feel comfortable out there with that thought in mind. And of course, he related to youngsters in the way he related to his own kids. For those of you hiking next year, make a point of speaking to a different generation. You're going to enjoy it, and I bet we can all learn something from folks younger and older than us. Well, not in my case. There won't be that many older who are hiking. And what about those stream crossings in the north? We've heard it anecdotally, but getting a number to put it in context really drives home the truth of those anecdotes. Now, Joanne has a couple of weeks to bring us up to date with. Here she is.
Good morning, Steve.
Hey, Joanne, how are you?
I am good.
Well, we're going to go back in time this week because I screwed up last week. Oh, I couldn't believe it when I realised I'd knocked that out. But I guess
it happens.
Yeah, I guess it does. It actually doesn't happen that much with me for some reason. I've stayed in rough order, but to actually delete an interview, I'm just so annoyed myself. But that's the way it goes. So we're going to. So we're actually going to go back and talk about what we had last week. So I've still got all your notes and so on. And when we spoke last week, you were at Standing Bear Hostel, and I asked you about it. So I know from my memory, it was a very cool place to be and lots of fun. So what was it like for you?
It was good. It was very woodsy. They have this nice bunkhouse, and there were some guys, I call them long timers. They were hiking the trail, and they just got there and decided to stop and stay for a while, and they do some work during the day. But they started a nice wood fire, nice. So I got to dry out all my things, and in the freezer they had some beer and pizza and a little resupply. And one thing I find about hostels is they love to embellish their bathrooms. So there was this great mural in the shower, and the sink, the plumbing for the sink had like coiled copper tubing, like a still. It was just really fun to see.
Yeah, it is a fun place. We referred to it as the Vortex years ago when I went in 2019. That a lot of people were there for 5 or 6 days. They just couldn't seem to leave the place. So so it has an amazing pull. And of course, just as you're going southbound, you'd just gone through 2 great views. You'd obviously done Max Patch. We'll start with that one first. Tell us about Max Patch the day you went over it.
Oh, one of my favorite spots now. It was cold and windy, but it was sunny with some clouds in the sky, sure. And the views were tremendous. It was clear, and the colors, and just 360 degrees.
Yes, that's
people
the thing.
Up on the bulbs. I've seen a lot of people taking like engagement and pregnancy photos.
Oh God!
Up on the bulbs, and there was a lot of people day hiking and going up to see the views, which I really like to see people enjoying things like that.
Yeah, of course. And actually there's a pretty close by, there's a car park, a parking lot, which you can get access to Max Patch very easily. So and I don't know whether you've already been through it, I'm sure, beauty spot after Unaka Mountain. You've been through that? Did you? That for me was it's named beauty spot for a good reason. It's a fabulous place to see. Do you remember that?
Yes, that's where you can look down to Irwin.
That's right.
And I was totally surprised at that little gem of a spot.
Yeah.
You just hiking along, and beauty spots on the map, and then you get there, you go, "Ooh, aptly named."
I actually camped just 400 yards north of there, because you go down from it when you're going northbound, and there's a nice little camping spot there, and we went up at sunset and saw the sunset, which was fabulous. And you also went over Fire Skull Bald, and when we spoke last time I wasn't quite sure where that was, but then you reminded me, because I'd gone, it's an alternate route, isn't it, in bad weather, and I'd gone up it in 2014, and it started pouring about 100 yards after I started up in the tough spot. So tell us about Fire Skull Bald.
Well, that must have been treacherous in the rain, because it reminded me of southern Maine, where you're climbing up on the rocks, and it's a very narrow ridge. You can look on left and right at the same time, and it's rocks. But there's vegetation up there, but it is very narrow, and the views are just, again, fantastic from up there. I'm not sure all the directions.
Isn't it Tennessee to one side, North Carolina to the other side? Something like that.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the line, isn't it?
I'm sure it is, because we've been on the border for a while now.
Yeah. And you said that in in your notes, and I don't even recall your answer in the recording last week, so I certainly want to ask this again. You said that I forgot to read the far out comments. It worked out.
Oh.
What did you forget to read, and how did it work out?
That was the campsite that I was talking about that I planned on staying at.
Oh, that's right, yes.
I kept meeting little groups of people camping on the way up there, but that was just the mileage I wanted. So I'm like, that's the spot. There's water there. And I got there, and it was down over the side of the trail, over a couple of giant blowdowns. And it's just this not even level spot where you go to the edge and you look down into this abyss. And I'm like tapping it with my pole, like, is this dirt that's washing out? Or tick, tick, no, okay, it's rock. And so I did find a flat spot just big enough for my sleep pad. I set up my tent, and it was cold and windy and supposed to rain. My pegs pulled out a couple of times. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's tough.
There's no other place close to here. But I got set up good, and it stayed all night, and it did rain in the night. And there's something very satisfying. I think you've said in the past, like, we kind of become part of the nature. And in the morning, I woke up with such a satisfying feeling that I was dry, that I was out there with nature. Yeah, and had done good.
I think when you're facing nature, as you call it, at its most severe, the fact that you come through it more than unscathed, you come through it comfortable and warm and secure, is a kind of, it feels like a little bit of a win, doesn't it? And you give it actually, yes. I felt it bolstered my confidence somewhat. You know that I can. You know, it's a reaffirmation that you can do this, and I like that.
Yeah, it's like, I can do this.
Exactly.
And I am doing this. And so the comments, some of them early in the summer said, this is such a beautiful spot. And then ones later in the summer were like, no level spaces, yada, yada. So I didn't read those, and it's probably just as well because I made it work, and I wasn't afraid to make it work.
Yeah.
I ended up good. But
funny enough, did you then not amend those comments, but did you add a comment of your own on Far Out?
I didn't, because I'm not logged into it, and I don't know what my login is.
Funny enough, so joking aside, that's quite an important thing to do in many ways. I think you'll agree, you know, to be giving those comments. It's such a collaborative process. Then it allows people to get a benefit from somebody who's just been there. So I think it's one of the things you want to find out what your bloody login is.
Yeah, I have left comments in the past, but, you know, rebooting, updating phone and all of that, the login unlogged itself.
Oh, dear. That's where it goes, I guess. Now, also that you were talking about in your notes last week, which I thought was fascinating, and I think about it, I seem to remember the same when I was obviously going north at the time, but you're going south. You said that you're noticing the little lasts of the hike, you know, last roll of toilet paper and so on. So when did you start that then?
It was probably a week and a half ago when I was actually working a cat hole, and I was like, all of a sudden, like, this is my last roll of toilet paper I'm going to need. And I have my last tube of toothpaste I'm going to need. And I'm on my last map. Wee-haw! And it, you know, it's like those things, you know them, but then at some point, sometimes things just hit you, and it's like, oh, wow. I'm really getting here near the end. Did
that have a wider impact on you, though? Did that start making you not upset or worried or anything like that, but did it have an impact on you when you realise now you start realising it's coming to an end? Because when you get to the end, it just literally stops just like that. That was one of the big shocks for Katahdin for me. You know, I don't know why I was surprised. Once you get to Katahdin, it's over. It's done. I know you've got to climb down again. So you're coming towards the end now. You're starting to realise this. Are you starting to feel kind of almost like you're going to be missing it, or what?
I think it's just, for me, a good reminder to still enjoy it while I'm here. Because for me right now, like, that end point eclipse all the other things between here and there.
Right.
So I need to remember to enjoy them, because I don't have like A-Ball Bridge. I don't have the birches. And those are really big and important pieces getting to Katahdin.
Sure.
So I don't have those things. So I'm trying to remember Fontana Dam is really cool, and Blood Mountain is going to be really cool, and a milestone in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park was really important and, good to spend time in and fantastic to experience. So it's just that reminder.
Yeah, and those reminders are good to have. In fact, in many ways, in your case, because you're aware of it, it might just prepare you for the end when it comes, because it is such a sudden cut-off. It's almost like it's almost like death in the family. It's nowhere near as bad, of course, but it feels like something has suddenly happened, and what you've been doing for the last 5 or 6 months has been undermined or suddenly just immediately stopped, and it comes as a shock to the system for a lot of people, I tell you. Now, when we did last speak, you were, as we said, at Standing Bear Hostel, but now we're going to move on to what's happened since then, because that, as people probably know, the Standing Bear Hostel is right at the north end of the Smokies. So you're just about to go in the Smokies. What was that like?
Well, I wanted a welcome sign going into the Smokies. You are a fantastic AT hiker, and now you get this privilege. But there's just a little box I put my permit in and climbed up and up. The first or second night. Okay, so coming down into Standing Bear, right. I came over Snowbird Peak.
Right.
And when I was up there, it was raining hard. And when the big gusts of wind came, there was snow in it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, up in the Smokies, it was snowing.
Wow.
So when I came out of Standing Bear, I went up and I had to go. I went to Mount Cameron, the fire tower there. It was sunny and with beautiful views, and there was day hikers to chat with. And that was all fun. And then so I came back to the AT from Mount Cameron, and I had to go up Mount Gaia, which is like 5,500 feet. Mm-hmm. And so there was still snow. They had gotten about 4 inches of snow up there.
Wow.
And so it was a long day, and I get within 4 miles of the shelter, and I'm walking like in this trough of water and slush that's 2 or 3 inches deep. The snow is still melting off the trees. Yeah. It's kind of like I'm in the fog and the clouds, and it was not fun. I didn't get to the shelter until like 7:30, which is well after dark.
Sure.
Cold, wet. I got the last spot in there. But everybody was really good. And then when I woke up in the morning, I found out I was sleeping next to Bug Bait, and her partner was up above me. And so it was fun to see people I knew in the morning.
Oh, really? When did you last see them?
Up in the Shenandoahs, early Shenandoah Park.
It's strange how that happens. It's amazing.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, carry on then.
Okay, so I did that. I got up in the morning, and I was going down to Newfound Gap to meet my friend to Zero in Gatlinburg.
Right. Okay. And what was Gatlinburg like?
By the time we got down in there, it was dark, and we ever got to the bottom of the mountain, and I saw all the lights. I'm like, what is this? I thought I was at an airport. And it was bigger than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Very, tourist attraction, vacation land kind of place.
Sure.
But we had a nice little hotel room, and I got to eat at Shoney's for the first time ever. Did the laundry resupply, went to a craft fair. It was low key. It was very nice.
It's a good, I was a bit cynical of Gatlinburg, which I shouldn't have been. And I was very cynical first time I did a lot of this trip, actually, the first time. But the Gatlinburg I thought was tacky. Second time I thought it was just perfect for the middle of the Smokies. It's a great thing to get out of the Smokies for a while. Couldn't imagine going through the Smokies in one go. I found it hard work and 2 separate sections, and I actually got snow both times on the northern section. And that was in April. I went as well. So it's kind of amazing how it can be. So you got back on. and you obviously there's a few other things you went through, including the magnificent Clingman's Dome.
Yes. So the morning that I got back on trail, I was going up to Clingman's Dome.
Right.
And I get out of the car and I start walking, and it's windy. And the higher I go, the more I see the clouds. And they form at the top of the mountains because the damp air comes up, and as it cools, it condensates. So it actually makes clouds at the tops of the mountains. And so I'm like, oh, I think I hear thunder. And I'm like, okay. I'm walking in the clouds and I hear thunder.
Yeah.
And I hear thunder again, and then it starts hailing. I went through like 8 episodes of thunder followed by hail.
Wow.
Thunder followed by hail. And when I got the other side of Clingman's Dome, the hail was like the size of green peas. Wow. It was just incredible. It didn't hail when I was at the tower.
Yeah.
And when I went up there, just as I got to the top, there was a few brief seconds where I could see golden trees through the leaves, but there was really no view, and it was crazy windy. I started falling over, and I had to duck down.
Good Lord.
Partway up the ramp. But the day hikers were having such a grand time because the wind was so crazy. They thought it was cool, and people were wrapped in blankets, and one guy was wrapped in a beach towel. It was just so fun. I was taking people's pictures for them.
Did you tell them you were a thru hiker?
Not most of them. There were a couple of people who I talked to. Yeah, but
nice.
I didn't spend very long up there.
It's not great, is it? I mean, it's not a great part of to me, it's not a great part of the trail at all. And then once again, doing this in reverse, you go down from there and you go through what for me was one of the most atmospheric parts of the whole. All the foresting on the trail was very dark in there. Was it for you down below as you started going down below?
Yes, it was dark. But one thing I was telling this to Pop yesterday when we were walking through, almost every day, late in the day, when the sun's getting low, I've named it my Dorothy time because it gets really dark and kind of creepy, like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz going through that dark apple orchard when the trees grab her. It just feels like that. And it happens almost every single day. I have this Dorothy time.
It's that different time of year. You know, you're hiking the time that a lot of people don't hike, which is October time. And it's now at the end of October as well. So I'm sure the days are getting shorter and shorter. And I'm sure you notice those. And you start losing the sun early. I'd imagine how dark it is down there as well.
When you go on the dark side of the hill. And luckily, you know, you go back and forth as you go through the ribboning of the mountain. You be on the dark side, the bright side,
That's
the dark side, the bright side.
Yeah, nice. So, and you've mentioned in your note to me shelters. Is there something specific about shelters that happened, or is it the rules within shelters that was annoying?
No, in the Smoky National Park, you're supposed to stay in the shelters.
That's right. I know.
So, and they have tarps up on the front of most of them now, so that's good. But I usually prefer to stay in my tent, but I had a nice time staying in the shelters and bumping into people. I've been trying to catch up with Pop and Mountain Dew since the early Shenandoahs and since I went home for my mom's birthday. Yeah. So I caught up with them at one of the shelters, and there was, I think his name was Wildcat, and his partner, Becky. They were just hanging out in a shelter for 3 days. So they had made this grand fire and had cookies for us. And he's a Triple Crowner, which he wouldn't tell me, but Becky told me. And so it just can be a nice time in a place like at the end of a snowy day where you can get in and, you know, you're all in the same boat.
Yeah, I can believe that. I can understand. But 3 days in a shelter? Oh my gosh, what are they doing there? Oh, I didn't ask, but what?
I don't know. Enjoying it.
Enjoying the solitude. Let's say enjoying the solitude. Let's go with that, shall we?
I think he enjoys seeing the hikers too, because he's nice. You can tell when he talks to you, like,
that's nice.
You know, welcome to the shelter and glad you were with us. And he likes the people.
That's cool. And the last note you made was the shuck stack fire tower, which I recall knowing that there was a little side trail to get to. I thought there's no bloody way I'm walking up there. So I didn't go up the Shutstack fire tower. And I went to it. I went towards it because it is off trail, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a steep little climb up the ridge.
But as soon as I heard steep, I was done. It wasn't going to work for me at all. So yeah, good. So much for the experience. So you might as well tell me because I've never been up it. So what was it like?
Yeah, it's a very sturdy tower, but it's very open compared to some of the others where you can just walk right off the platform, any of the platforms as you go up it. So it's like, hang on, 3 points of contact at all. And then you can see Fontana Dam. 60-degree view is one of the best. So like when I've been up at Klingman's Dome, or even when I didn't have much of a view from Katahdin, it's okay because there's other fantastic places to get views as well. And Shutstack Tower is one of them.
Well, I very much agree with that because I always say take the views when you can, because they may not be there the next day. So you will always get some views at some stage. But, I've been through places first time when I couldn't see anything, and the second time I could see everything. So it's using those views when you can. And I think actually, if I ever go for a third time, I will go up Shutstack Tower. But
you should.
I feel I should do, yeah. So
hang on.
so you come out the Smokies, which is quite a long. In fact, are you out the Smokies now, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah, you came out of the Smokies. It's a long down, isn't it? Seems endless. It seems endless. What was it like walking across the dam? I always think that's a fantastic moment.
It's a pretty cool dam. It's long.
Oh, yeah.
I liked looking on the downside of it, where you can see down through the cavernous valley and the ridge that's on the upper side of it. And then the lake is really low right now, so you can really see the shore.
Wow.
So that is beautiful. And then the Fontana Dam Shelter, the Fontana Hilton.
Yes.
That is just a really nice place to be.
Right.
Because you have everything that you need right there.
I went into the village, so I stayed in somewhere pretty decent. I didn't stay at the Hilton either time. So where are you now? Are you? Is that where you are now? Roughly there?
I stopped at the marina this morning and got a little bit of resupply, and I'm headed up out of Fontana Dam now.
Wow. So how many miles is that to go then, Joanne?
Overall, probably about 173 or 4.
Wow, under 200.
Yeah.
That's quite a time, 170 miles. Great. Well, look, that was a great catch up. I'm really pleased we did that. We had a few technical glitches, and which hopefully I'm going to tell them now, but hopefully the listeners won't notice it. Joanne and I lost contact about 3 or 4 times in this call, but I'm going to knit it all together because I'm really good at remembering actually what you've just said. And she just goes through. Yeah. All right, Joanne. Well, look, good to talk to you, and stay well. And only 170 odd miles to go. Incredible.
Yeah. Yep.
Hang on. That means you've gone over 2,000 miles then.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's the other way of looking at it.
There were probably some people in the forest that heard me woohooing about that.
Is there a southbound 2,000 mile marker?
I haven't noticed one.
Oh, right. Oh, shame. Okay. Well, look, have a good time. Enjoy it, and we'll catch up soon, okay?
Yep. Great, Steve. Thank you.
Cheers then. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Under 200 miles to go, eh? Much like Aron, Joanne seems blessed with a pretty much perfect hike. I hadn't previously thought how much quicker it gets dark in the autumn, and it's only going to get worse, yet she remains fairly serene about it all. Before we hear from Jessica, let's thank our wonderful donors. Our recurring donors are Emmanuel Bravo Ramos, Kevin Weidman, Brian Alsop, Bruce Brinker, Jessica Diaz, Gregory Gerpner and Hugh Ickrath, while Stephen Ventor also sent a very generous donation. Thanks to all of you for keeping the show going. Some of this week's money will be going towards my new phone hotspot. Now, let's hear from Jessica, and as often happens on the trail, she's staying with a friend of the show. Here she is.
Hello.
Hey, Jessica, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm fine. Now, where are you?
I'm at Betty McEnaney's house.
Yeah, Betty's great. She was part of the Mighty Blue Class 23, and she reached out to me recently, and you've obviously connected. So
Yeah.
where is that roughly? I don't actually know where on the is she near the trail or what?
She's about 45 minutes from the trail. She picked us up at Clarendon Gorge. I can't remember.
Nice.
I think the town is Cavendish that she lives in.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I think it's always great when people get together. They've kind of heard of each other on the show, and I think that's really nice. Have you met Bruce yet?
Yes, I have.
Good man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So is Mike with you?
Yes.
Terrific. So what's happened? I mean, you as always. No, that's not true. Not as always. But I haven't got any notes here. So
right.
When we left you last week, where were you, and what's been going on this week?
So when we left last week, I was somewhere before Killington. A couple of days
right,
before
yes.
Killington, before the inn at Long Trail.
Did you stop at the inn?
We did end up stopping at the inn. We didn't stay there. We were planning to get off there and possibly stay there, but at this time of year, they don't have their hiker rate anymore.
Right.
And this is one of the things I figured we were probably going to start running into at this point. A lot of the hostels are closing, and it's off season for hikers, kind of speak. So unfortunately, it was a little pricey to stay there, but right at the top of where you take the little Blue Blaze Trail to go down to the inn, we met this mother and daughter from California, and we just, offered to take their picture for them and started chatting. And the next thing I know, they're like, "Come on down, we'll buy you a beer."
Silly not to.
And yeah, well, and then a beer turned into appetizers, turned into lunch, turned into a ride into Rutland. So trail magic is definitely still happening out here.
Oh yeah, definitely, most certainly. Yeah, most certainly. So, and what's happened since? What's been going on? How's the hike been going?
Yeah, so it's been a lot of cold and wet.
Right.
Once we reached Rutland, we got back on the trail. We took this bus that is free in Rutland still because of a grant that they got during the pandemic back up to the trail.
Oh, really? Nice.
The bus driver was super sweet. He took one look at us and said, "I know where you're going," and delivered us right back.
I can smell
to the
you.
trail. Yeah, right. So delivered us right back to the trail. And when we got off the bus, the wind was howling. It was raining. It was foggy. It was just kind of crazy. So we did kind of a short day. We got into a shelter.
Right.
And then the next day they were predicting a crazy rainstorm. And we've had so many times when they were predicting a ton of rain and it never happened that we were like, you know what, we'll see what happens. And then, of course, the rain actually came, and it was torrential, and we ended up zeroing in the shelter again. Especially since the next day, the temperatures were supposed to be in the upper 30s. And we figured if we got soaking wet, we weren't going to dry out, and then it was going to be freezing cold.
So tell me about a day in the shelter. I mean, you're somewhat limited in what you can do, aren't you? So what'd you do?
I mean, we had cell service, so we spent a lot of time on our phones, which, sitting there watching the radar thinking, like, maybe it'll let up. No, it's not letting up. It's going to be really cold, back and forth type of thing. Just resting and trying not to eat all the food in your food bag because we weren't sure how many more days it was going to take us. I, unfortunately, am starting to have some foot issues, so I figured, like, all right, well, a day off of it would be a good thing, and that wasn't a terrible thing either. How are they manifesting themselves in your foot issues? Are they blisters or just aches or what? I think I am dealing with Achilles tendonitis in my right foot right now.
Ooh,
I have a lot of pain right across the back of my heel, which is the attachment point for the Achilles. So that's not a lot of fun. Going uphill right now is a bit of a problem.
do you take ibuprofen, by the way?
I do. I try not to take too much of it, but when something like this pops up, you gotta.
Well, interestingly enough, I've just been recording for a future episode. A good friend of the show, who's been on the show more than anybody other than me, is Dr. Lynn. And she was doing this wilderness first aid course and so on, and she was telling me about that. One of the things, because she always told me not to take too much ibuprofen, but she said when you really need it, take two extra strength Tylenol and 2 ibuprofen. The extra strength Tylenol will help your pain, and the ibuprofen will reduce the swelling, and which is swelling and inflammation is one of our big problems as a society anyway, I guess. So she said that using combination, they're surprisingly effective. So you might want to think about that. Yeah. So what about the hiking itself then? Is it all been a bit clouded by the weather and your tendon and your Achilles tendon?
Yeah, a little bit. So we made it up over Killington on Sunday, a couple of days ago. After that zero, to go up there and it's cold and it's still wet. The climb wasn't too bad actually, but having just taken a zero, that probably didn't hurt either. But once we got up there, there's a shelter at the top there, and we stopped to take a little bit of a break. And it's one of those things, like, you always forget when it gets to be what is essentially winter hiking season in the Northeast now, to not stop too long. I got cold real quick, so we kind of got moving. And then when we got out of the shelter, we noticed there were icicles forming on some of the signs. So we were ready to get down. And as we were climbing down, it started snowing.
Oh my gosh. You're certainly getting some weather, aren't you? What about the hike itself, though? Are you starting to? I mean, you're obviously counting down the miles now, I guess. How many miles have you done since you headed south?
I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60.
Okay. Well, that's progress. It's slowish progress, I guess. But do you feel that once you get a good wind, if you get decent weather for a couple of days, it will really help the hike? Are you ready to start hiking a bit harder?
I hope so. Again, the foot thing is a bit of a concern. We might actually. Betty is an absolute angel. We might be doing some slack packing in the next couple of days, so I'm hoping not carrying my full weight of my pack will also help with that. But I mean, if the weather cooperates, we'd love to make more miles, depending on how the bodies are holding up. Yeah. And
have you checked the forecast? How's it looking in the next couple of days?
The next few days, it's supposed to get up to almost 70, but then immediately turns around and goes back down into the, upper 30s with the possibility of snow. So it's typical fall in New England, pretty much. I keep joking that Vermont is trying to say, hey, I can be tough like New Hampshire too, the next door neighbor.
Oh, dear. But look, the most marvelous thing about you, Jessica, is however tough you're finding it, you're still going. So keep on trucking and just keep trying to keep. I don't know, to be honest with you, I don't know how to manage an Achilles tendon because I've never had a problem with it. But I was lucky, I guess. But you might want to think about that, taking couple of double extra strength Tylenol and 2 ibuprofen before you start walking next, and just see how it feels. If that doesn't do anything for you, don't bother doing it again. But it's worth trying something, isn't it?
Yeah, one of the things I'm also doing since Betty picked us up yesterday, and it's kind of a, I guess, old-fashioned remedy, but I've had it work very well for similar issues in the past, is castor oil pack. So I did that last night, and hopefully that'll start to ease things up there too.
What on earth is a castor oil pack? Never heard of it.
Okay, so basically take castor oil, slather the area of pain with it, take an old sock or something like that to put over it to add warmth and to not get castor oil all over your sheets and stuff. Wrap it with a ace bandage or something like that overnight, and leave it on overnight. And the castor oil is supposed to soak into the tendon sheath, which is usually what's been getting, like with tendonitis, it's an inflammation in the tendon sheath. So the tendon is not able to slide back and forth through the sheath properly. It's supposed to help take the inflammation out so that the tendon can again move properly.
Okay. So basically oiling your joints.
Kind of,
oiling your tendons.
I am the Tin Man now, I guess you could say.
That's funny. That's funny. Okay, well, look, you're sounding good. Say hi to Betty and Bruce for me, and say to the big man, of course. And we'll catch up again next week, okay?
All right, sounds good.
Cheers then. Bye.
Bye.
Not only hadn't I thought before about losing the light as the year goes on, I hadn't considered the closed season for hostels. As I said at the end, Jessica may have been going through it, but she's still going. Let's hope her Achilles sorts itself out. Doing a bit of slack packing with the wonderful Betty may be just the tonic she needs. So that's it today. Looks like I'll get this out after all. I hope the editing's okay, but I know the content is really good today. I'll see you next week.